What if I told you that every time you tried to manifest something and failed, you were actually succeeding? This story will reveal the secret quantum principle that turns every perceived failure into a necessary stepping stone, proving that the universe is arranging your success even when it feels like everything is falling apart. By the end, you'll understand why the most powerful manifestations always work backwards. Leo's Chicago apartment was a graveyard of half-finished canvases. At 32, the vibrant, energetic artist who had moved to the city with a universe of dreams was now a man haunted by a silent, crippling creative block. His desire was singular and all-consuming, to have his own solo gallery show. He wanted to see his soul splashed across pristine white walls, to feel the electric buzz of an audience connecting with his work. But for 2 years, his hands, once so sure and expressive, felt like foreign objects. His paintbrushes gathered dust. His antagonist wasn't a person, but a deafening internal voice, the voice of logic. It was a relentless critic that dissected every shred of inspiration, starved every creative impulse, and reminded him daily of his dwindling bank account and the real jobs his friends had. He tried every manifestation technique he read about online: scripting, visualizing, affirming. He spent hours trying to feel the joy of a successful show, but the feeling was hollow, a desperate echo in the vast emptiness of his current reality. One morning, after a particularly intense visualization session, he opened his mail not to a check or an opportunity, but to a final eviction notice. The paper trembled in his hand, a physical manifestation of his failure. The universe wasn't just ignoring him, it was laughing at him. Presa na escurideo de suas proprias crencas, a prova de seu fracasso em suas maus, será que este era o sinal final do universo para ele desistir. Ou era a primeira pista de poder tão contraintuitivo que ele nunca poderia te lo compreendido? If you've ever felt this frustration, if you've ever felt like your dreams are moving further away, subscribe. This journey is for you. Defeated, Leo spent his last few dollars on a coffee and wandered aimlessly through Chicago's Wicker Park neighborhood, the eviction notice a cold weight in his pocket. It was the universe's cruel joke that had pushed him out of his apartment and onto the rainy streets. This was the closing of the previous loop. The failure he'd manifested had forced him into motion. He found himself drawn to a small, cluttered bookstore he'd never noticed before, its sign simply reading, "As above, so below." Inside, the air smelled of old paper and incense. The proprietor, a serene man named Elias with eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets, was dusting a collection of leather-bound books. He didn't greet Leo, but simply said, "Sometimes, the universe has to burn the old house down to make you build a mansion." The words struck Leo with an uncanny precision. Elias became his unwitting mentor. He explained that Leo was trying to build a ladder to the moon, rung by painful rung. "Quantum manifestation is not a ladder, it's a destination," Elias said, his voice calm and steady. "You don't build your way to it. You live from it." Elias introduced a radical concept. He told Leo to stop visualizing the steps to getting a gallery show, and instead to fully embody the state of being the artist who had just completed a wildly successful one. He was to work backwards. This meant feeling the satisfaction, the relief, the creative fulfillment, not as a future hope, but as a present moment memory. Leo's background, rooted in a family that valued hard work and tangible results, made this feel like madness. He was being asked to embrace delusion while his life crumbled. As Elias spoke, he gestured to a framed quote on the wall, attributed to Neville Goddard: "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." For the first time, Leo didn't see the words as a fluffy affirmation, but as a profound, albeit terrifying, instruction. He left the bookstore not with a solution, but with a puzzle that defied all logic. He now held a spark of impossible hope, but how could a man with no art, no home, and no prospects possibly embody the energy of success? And what would his logical mind do to sabotage this radical experiment? The next week was a silent war fought entirely within Leo's mind. The eviction notice had forced him onto his friend's couch, a physical manifestation of the failure that Elias called a necessary fire. This closed the previous loop. Now, he had to confront the new one, the challenge of embodying a reality that was a blatant lie. He tried to follow Elias's advice. He walked through the Art Institute of Chicago, not as a struggling artist looking for inspiration, but as if he were a celebrated peer, reminiscing on the feeling of his own recent triumph. But his logical mind, his lifelong antagonist, fought back with brutal efficiency. "Who are you kidding?" it sneered. "You're a fraud. You're unemployed, homeless, and you haven't painted anything in 2 years. This isn't manifestation, it's psychosis." The internal conflict was exhausting. For every moment he managed to capture the feeling of success, a wave of shame and doubt would crash over him, leaving him breathless. He was failing forward. One afternoon, sitting by the lakefront, he was on the verge of surrendering completely. He pulled out his old, battered sketchbook, not to draw, but to write a list of real jobs he could apply for. As he clicked his pen, the ink cartridge exploded, spattering a chaotic, beautiful pattern of deep blue across the page. It looked like a distant galaxy, a miniature nebula born from an accident. For the first time in years, he didn't see a mistake. He saw an idea. It was a tiny, bizarre sign, a crack in the solid wall of his logic. Just as he was about to surrender to his old reality, the universe sent him a chaotic, inky sign. Was this a mere accident, or was it the first breadcrumb on a trail leading backwards from his success? And what tempting offer from his old world would appear now to test his fragile, newfound faith? The ink blot became his anchor. That night, on his friend's floor, he didn't try to paint a masterpiece. He just played with ink and water on paper, chasing the feeling of chaotic creation he'd stumbled upon. The previous loop closed. The strange sign had broken his creative block. But a new loop opened almost immediately. His older brother, Mark, a successful investment banker, called him. "Leo, I heard about the apartment," he said, his voice a familiar blend of pity and impatience. "I have a job for you at my firm. It's a graphic design role in the marketing department. It's stable. It's time." This was the ultimate temptation. It wasn't just a job, it was a pre-packaged reality of security, parental approval, and a respectable answer to the question, "What do you do?" The pressure was immense. The deadline to accept was the end of the week, injecting a powerful temporal pressure into his spiritual quest. This offer became the central sub-trauma, a tangible representation of the choice he had to make. The logical, step-by-step path his brother offered versus the illogical, faith-based quantum leap Elias had described. His interactions with his friend, a practical musician who paid the bills by playing cover songs at weddings, added another layer of complexity. "Look man, there's no shame in taking the gig," his friend advised. "You can paint on the weekends. It's called being an adult." Everyone in his life was a mirror reflecting his own deepest fears. They were all showing him the ladder, while Elias had told him to simply appear at the destination. The world was screaming at him to build, while his soul was whispering for him to become. He is now standing at a cosmic crossroads, with the logical world offering a safe harbor and the universe offering an invisible, terrifying leap. But what undeniable divine message is about to shatter the illusion of his choice? The turning point came on the final day he had to decide on the job offer. He was tormented. He went back to the bookstore, desperate for a sign, for anything. Elias wasn't there. But on the counter was an open book, and a single passage was highlighted. It was from the physicist Amit Goswami. "Consciousness is the ground of all being. You must collapse the wave of possibility by choosing with your attention and intention." The message promised in the last chapter had been delivered. Disappointed not to find his mentor, Leo left and decided to walk. He let his feet carry him, his mind numb with indecision. He found himself in Pilsen, a neighborhood famous for its vibrant street art. As he turned a corner, he stopped dead. Before him was a massive mural covering the entire side of a brick building. It was a stunning, chaotic explosion of blues and blacks, a galaxy of swirling ink, an exact, building-sized replica of the accidental inkblot from his sketchbook. His heart hammered in his chest. It was impossible. It was a sign so loud, so personal, so irrefutably for him that it bypassed his logical mind and spoke directly to his soul. In that instant, the quantum shift happened. He wasn't trying to feel like a successful artist anymore. He was one. The mural wasn't a sign he was on the right path, it was a reflection of the reality he had already begun to create from the inside out. He understood. The universe wasn't giving him steps. It was mirroring his embodied state of being. The failure of the eviction, the accident of the inkblot, they weren't random events. They were the universe rearranging the 3D world to match the frequency he was now holding. He pulled out his phone, his hands steady, and called his brother. "Thank you for the offer, Mark," he said, a smile in his voice. "But I have a gallery show to prepare for." He didn't know how, when, or where. He just knew it was a fact. Now that he has experienced the power of true quantum alignment, how will his soul navigate the practical reality of a world that still demands proof and payment? The decision to reject the job offer was a declaration of energetic sovereignty, and the universe responded immediately. The previous loop, how he would react to the real world, began to close. Walking back from Pilsen, he felt a pull to enter a small, independent art supply store. As he was buying ink, the owner, a woman named Sophia, commented on his vibrant energy. "You're an artist," she said, more of a statement than a question. On impulse, Leo showed her the photo of the mural and the original inkblot in his sketchbook. Her eyes lit up. "This is incredible," she breathed. "I have a small gallery space in the back of my shop. It's empty next month. I can't pay you, but if you can fill it with work like this, you can have it for a month. Whatever you sell, you keep." It wasn't the grand, prestigious gallery he used to visualize. It was a small, humble space in the back of a store. His old self, the one who built ladders, would have seen this as a failure, a step down. But the new Leo, the one who worked backwards from the feeling, recognized it for what it was. The next perfect, illogical piece of the puzzle falling into place. He accepted on the spot. He spent the next 3 weeks in a creative frenzy, sleeping on his friend's couch and painting on the floor, powered not by desperation, but by the pure joy of creation. He was no longer trying to get something, he was simply being the artist. This was his new practice, action born from alignment. His new light is shining brightly in a small, borrowed space. But is it powerful enough to withstand the final, crushing test of expectation that the universe has in store? The night of the opening arrived. This was the final test mentioned in the last chapter, the confrontation with expectation. Leo stood in the small gallery, surrounded by a dozen canvases of his explosive, galactic inkblots. The work was honest, powerful, and alive. But only a handful of people showed up: his friend, a few curious customers from the art store, and his brother Mark, whose expression was a painful mix of forced support and pity. The crushing weight of his old definition of success descended upon him. By all external metrics, this was a failure. This was not the packed gallery of his dreams. There were no critics, no red dots on the walls indicating a sale. The voice of logic, his symbolic antagonist, returned for its final assault. "See, this is what you gave up a career for. A handful of people in the back of a shop. You are a fool." For a moment, the old despair threatened to consume him. This was the ultimate challenge. Could he hold the feeling of success even when the 3D reality screamed failure? He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and remembered the mural. He remembered Elias's words. He wasn't here to get validation. He was here to express the energy of the artist who had already succeeded. He opened his eyes, smiled, and began talking to the few people who were there, not as a desperate artist trying to sell, but as a passionate creator sharing his work. He detached from the outcome completely. This was his true growth, embodying his desired state, independent of the external reflection. He has transformed his inner state in the face of apparent failure. Now, standing in his triumph of spirit, what final act of universal magic is about to occur as a direct result of his unwavering faith? As the small event began to wind down, resolving the sub-trauma of his need for external validation, the tension shifted. His brother Mark, having seen the genuine passion in Leo's eyes, approached him. "Leo, I still don't get it," he said, shaking his head. "But I've never seen you this alive. The art is incredible. This small moment of acceptance was a sign that Leo's inner shift was beginning to impact the people around him. The energy in the room felt different now. Leo, free from the need for a specific outcome, was a beacon of calm, creative power. Just as Sophia was about to start dimming the lights, the bell on the shop door jingled. An elderly woman, who had been quietly observing a large canvas in the corner for the last 20 minutes, approached him. She introduced herself as Eleanor Vance. The name didn't mean anything to him. "Young man," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I was in town for a meeting that was cancelled at the last minute. I was walking and a feeling, pulled me into the shop. I've been looking for an artist for the new wing of the Vance Contemporary Art Museum for 6 months." The name of the museum hit Leo like a physical blow. It was the most prestigious modern art institution in the Midwest. This was the moment everything had been leading to. This was the manifestation he had been seeking, arriving in a way he could never have possibly engineered. The greatest manifestation of his life is standing before him, not because he chased it, but because he allowed it to find him. But what final act of surrender will be required to receive it? Eleanor Vance looked at him, her gaze piercing. "Your work is exactly what we need. It's cosmic, it's raw, it's alive." Then came the final step of the process. We would want to commission a series. It would mean turning down any other offers and working exclusively with us for the next year. For a fleeting second, his logical mind flared up. What if he sold a few pieces here tonight? What if he could leverage this for a multi-gallery deal? It was the ghost of the old way of thinking, of building ladders. He looked at the few people in the room, at the humble gallery in the back of a shop. This failure of an evening had been the precise, perfect, and only stage on which this miracle could have occurred. If the gallery had been packed, Eleanor might never have had the space to truly connect with the work. If his original manifestation of a show at a major gallery had worked, she, as a rival curator, would never have been there. Every single failure had been a divine course correction. This was the fulfillment of the promise made in the introduction. He took a breath and surrendered. "I would be honored," Leo said, his voice clear and steady. "I accept." The revelation was blindingly clear. Quantum manifestation works backwards. He had started with the end state, the feeling of being a successful, fulfilled artist. The universe, in its infinite intelligence, then orchestrated the most efficient, albeit illogical, path to that destination. The eviction, the inkblot, the failed gallery show, they were not obstacles. They were the path. He hadn't failed his way forward, he had succeeded his way backwards from a future that was already real. He achieved the impossible. But what does a life look like when you stop trying to control the path and simply trust the destination? A year later, Leo stood in the gleaming new wing of the Vance Contemporary Art Museum. The hall was vast, filled with the hum of an excited crowd, and on the walls hung his Cosmic Ink series, each piece larger and more breathtaking than the last. He wasn't just in a gallery, a wing of a museum had been built around his vision. The abundance that flowed into his life was beyond anything his logical mind could have conceived. He had a beautiful studio, financial freedom, and most importantly, a profound and unshakable connection to the creative flow of the universe. His life was no longer about chasing goals. It was about choosing a state of being and watching with wonder as the world rearranged itself to match. He understood that failing forward was the universe's fail-safe system. When you live from the end, anything not in alignment with that reality simply falls away, sometimes painfully, sometimes chaotically, but always perfectly. Those moments are not failures, they are the holy friction of your old reality dissolving to make way for the new. He had become a living embodiment of the principle. He no longer feared mistakes or detours, because he knew they were simply the quantum breadcrumbs leading him home. His journey, which began in a state of lack and despair, had concluded in a state of grace, proving the ultimate spiritual truth he had learned along the way. His journey of manifestation seems complete, but the universe is infinite. Months later, Leo receives a letter from a young artist who attended his museum opening. Your story changed my life. It reads, I was about to give up after my gallery dropped me. But now I see it wasn't a failure. It was a clearing. Leo smiles. He picks up a brush, not to paint a canvas for a museum, but to paint for the simple, joyful feeling of it. He has found his true guide. He found the universal secret to turning failure into fuel. Have you ever looked back at a failure in your life and realized it was the best thing that ever happened to you? The universe is constantly sending us feedback, and what we call failure is often just divine redirection. It's a sign that we need to stop focusing on the how and start embodying the who we wish to be. What is a failure you've experienced that you can now reframe as a necessary step? Share your story in the comments below. Let's create a powerful space to celebrate our failures forward. For more stories that reveal the quantum secrets of manifestation and reality creation, make sure you subscribe and join this co-creative community.